Look at this! They're destroying my neighborhood! This is what happens when you let people ignore HOA rules!
I'm the fire chief. The house on fire was mine. My wife and 8-year-old son were inside. I arrived in 90 seconds. My crew couldn't access the hydrant and HOA. President had parked her Escalade directly in front of it. She was inside her house, refusing to move. Every second counted. Smoke poured from my son's bedroom window. I made a decision that would change everything. Here's what happened. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 57 years old, and I've been in the fire service for 33 years. The last 12 years as fire chief of Riverside County Fire Department in Northern California. In 3 decades, I've seen things most people only have nightmares about. House fires, car accidents, industrial disasters. I've pulled people from burning buildings, performed CPR on children, held the hands of people taking their last breaths. You learn to compartmentalize in this job. You have to. You can't carry every tragedy home with you, or you'll break. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for hearing your own address come across the dispatch radio. It was Tuesday afternoon, March 5th, 2024. I sat in my office at headquarters doing paperwork, budget reports, and personnel reviews. The hidden administrative side of being chief, never mentioned 2 rookie firefighters who dream of saving lives. My radio crackled at 2:47 p.m. Dispatch to all units. A structure fire was reported at 847 Oakwood Avenue, residential. The caller reports heavy smoke. A possible structure fire was inside. 847 Oakwood Avenue. My address. My home. For a second, maybe 2, my brain just stopped working. You know that feeling when something is so shocking that your mind refuses to process it? That's what happened. Then training kicked in. Chief Webb responding. I'm 3 minutes out. Dispatch. Confirm occupants. Caller reports to possible occupants. Female adult and juvenile male. My wife Lisa. My son Tyler. I was already running to my vehicle. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my radio again. All responding units. Chief Webb on scene. This is my residence. Wife and 8-year-old son are possibly inside. Engine 4, what's your Engine 4. 4 minutes out, Chief. 4 minutes. In a structure fire, 4 minutes is an eternity. I hit the lights and sirens, drove faster than I've ever driven in my life, ran 2 red lights. Didn't care. My mind was racing. Lisa was home. She'd taken the day off to work on her garden. Tyler had stayed home sick from school with a mild cold. Nothing serious. Just enough to keep him home. They were both inside. I tried calling Lisa's cell phone. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. The 3-minute drive felt like 30 years. I came around the corner onto Oakwood Avenue and saw it. Smoke. Thick, dark smoke is pouring from the 2nd floor of my house. From Tyler's bedroom window. I screeched to a stop. Jumped out. My training said to wait for backup. Wait for your crew. Never enter a structured fire alone. But my son was in there. I ran toward the front door. That's when I saw Lisa. She was on the front lawn, coughing, her face black with soot. Tyler. She was screaming. Tyler's still inside. He's upstairs. I couldn't reach him. The stairs were blocked. She grabbed my arm. Marcus. He's in his room. I tried to get to him, but the smoke. I know. Baby. I know. Stay here. I turned to run inside. Then I heard Engine 4's siren. They were close. 30 seconds maybe. That's when I saw the problem. The fire hydrant directly in front of my house, the one we'd need to fight this fire, was completely blocked by a black Cadillac Escalade, parked right in front of it. Less than 2 feet of clearance. We couldn't access the hydrant, and without that hydrant, we couldn't get enough water pressure to fight the fire effectively. And I knew exactly who that Escalade belonged to. Engine 4 pulled up. Lieutenant Sarah Chen jumped out, already assessing the scene. Chief, we need that hydrant. Whose car is that? Brenda Morrison, HOA president. Lives right there. I pointed to the house directly across from mine. Sarah's face hardened. She parks there every day. I've seen it. We've had complaints about it for months. She was right. Brenda Morrison was the HOA president of our neighborhood, Oakwood Estates. She'd been elected about a year ago and immediately became everyone's nightmare. Constant violation notices, fines for grass being a quarter-inch too tall, complaints about kids' bikes left on driveways. She'd tried to fine one neighbor $500 because their Christmas lights were too bright. And she had this habit of parking her massive Escalade directly in front of the fire hydrant near her house, right across from mine. I'd spoken to her about it at least 5 times, always professionally. Explained that fire hydrants need 15 feet of clearance on both sides. That blocking them is not just an HOA violation, it's illegal. It's a public safety hazard. She'd smile, nod, and say she understood. Then park there again the next day. It's a public street. She'd told me the last time. I can park wherever I want. I'd considered having her car ticketed, but I was trying to keep the peace. Be a good neighbor. Handle things civilly. That decision was now potentially costing me my son's life. Get that car moved. Now, I ordered Sarah. She ran across the street and pounded on Brenda's door. I could see through the window. Brenda was home, sitting on her couch, looking at her phone. Sarah pounded again, harder. Brenda finally got up, opened the door. I couldn't hear the conversation from where I was standing, but I could see it. Sarah is pointing at the Escalade. I pointed at my burning house, gesturing urgently. Brenda shook her head, actually shook her head. She said something and started to close the door. Sarah blocked it with her boot, said something else, more urgent now. Brenda crossed her arms, said something back. Her face had that expression I'd seen before, smug, self-rigid. She was refusing to move her car. My house was on fire. My son was trapped inside, and this woman was refusing to move her vehicle so we could access the water we needed to save his life. More units were arriving. Engine 6, Ladder 1, paramedics. But without water from that hydrant, we were severely limited. Lieutenant Chen came running back. "Chief, she's refusing. Says she doesn't have to move for anyone. That you've been harassing her about her parking, and this is retaliation." I stared at her. "What?" She says if you ticket her car, she'll file a complaint against you for abuse of authority. The smoke from Tyler's window was getting thicker, darker. I looked at Sarah, at my burning house. That Escalade is blocking our hydrant. I made a decision. Break the windows. Run the hoses through the car. Sarah's eyes widened. "Chief, that's an order. We need that hydrant." She refuses to move. Break the windows. Run the hoses through. Do it now. It's a standard procedure, actually. When vehicles block hydrants during emergencies, we're authorized to break the windows and run hoses through them. It's in our protocols. It's legal. But I'd never actually done it before. Most people, when they realize there's a fire, move their cars immediately. Not Brenda Morrison. Firefighter James Rodriguez grabbed a Halligan bar, walked up to the Escalade. He looked at me one more time. I nodded. He smashed the driver's side window, then the passenger side. Glass exploded everywhere. And that's when Brenda came running out of her house, screaming, "What are you doing? That's my car. You can't do that." Brenda was running across the street in her bathrobe, her phone in her hand, recording everything. "I'm calling the police. This is destruction of property. I'll sue you. I'll have your badge." I ignored her. My team was already connecting the hoses to the hydrant, running them through the broken windows of her Escalade, setting up to fight the fire. "Ma'am, step back," Sarah told Brenda firmly. "This is an active fire scene. I don't care. That's my vehicle." "You had no right. Your vehicle was blocking emergency access to a fire hydrant," I said, my voice cold. "My son is trapped in that house. Now get out of the way, or I'll have you arrested for interfering with emergency operations." Her face turned red. "You can't threaten me. I'm the HOA president. I'll have you fired." "I'll step back. Now." One of the police officers who'd arrived with the paramedics took her by the arm. "Ma'am, You need to move back behind the line. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? While this was happening, my team was working. Water was flowing through the hoses now. 2 teams were preparing to enter the structure. But I wasn't waiting. Sarah, you're the incident commander. I'm going in. Chief, you can't. That's my son in there. I grabbed my gear from my vehicle, put on my SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus, my helmet, my gloves. Sarah knew better than to argue. She'd do the same if it were her kid. Rodriguez, Patterson, you're with me. We're going through the front, up the stairs, and into the second bedroom on the right. Fast but careful. We moved to the front door. The heat hit us immediately. Thick smoke. The fire had started somewhere on the second floor and was spreading fast. We went in low. Visibility was almost zero. I'd lived in this house for 6 years, but in that smoke, I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. Fire department. Call out. Nothing. We reached the stairs. They were intact, but the smoke was so thick, it was like trying to see through ink. We started up. Each step felt like it took forever. Tyler, it's Dad. Where are you? Still nothing. We reached the second floor. Turned right toward Tyler's room. The door was closed, thank God. A closed door can add precious minutes in a fire. I reached for the handle. Hot. Very hot. Door's hot. Fire's likely right behind it. Rodriguez positioned himself with the hose. Ready, Chief? I opened the door. Smoke and heat poured out, but I could see into the room. Tyler was on the floor next to his bed, unconscious. Smoke inhalation is most likely. I didn't think, just moved. Grabbed my son, lifted him. He was so small in my arms, so still. Got him. We're coming out. Rodriguez and Patterson cleared our path. We moved back toward the stairs as fast as we could safely move. Down the stairs, through the smoke, out the front door. The sunlight hit us. Fresh air. I lay Tyler on the grass. The paramedics were there instantly. 8-year-old male, smoke inhalation, unresponsive. They started working on him. Oxygen mask, checking vitals, starting an IV. I pulled off my mask, watched them work on my son. Lisa was there, crying, holding my hand so tight it hurt. Come on, baby, she whispered. Come on, Tyler. Breathe. One of the paramedics, Jennifer, I knew her. She'd worked with us for years, was doing chest compressions. No. Then Tyler coughed, sputtered, his eyes fluttered open. Dad. The relief that flooded through me was so intense that I almost collapsed. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. You're okay. You're going to be okay. The paramedics kept working. Got him stabilized. Loaded him into the ambulance. We're taking him to County General. Smoke inhalation, possible burns. He's stable, but we need to get him checked out thoroughly. I'm coming with you, Lisa said. I nodded. Go. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. She climbed into the ambulance, gave me one long look. Thank you, she mouthed. The ambulance pulled away, sirens blaring. I turned back to my house. My team had the fire under control now. The hydrant accessed through Brenda Morrison's destroyed Escalade was giving us all the water we needed. The fire was out within 20 minutes, but the damage was extensive. The entire second floor, most of Tyler's room, water, and smoke damage throughout the rest of the house. We'd probably lost everything. But Tyler was alive. That's when I turned and saw Brenda Morrison. She was still there, still recording, still complaining to the police officer about her car. I want them arrested. All of them. That fire chief destroyed my vehicle. I'm pressing charges. Something in me snapped. I walked over to Brenda, slowly, deliberately. The police officer, Officer David Park, another guy I'd worked with for years, saw me coming, stepped between us. Chief, maybe step aside, David. He looked at my face and moved. I stopped about 3 feet from Brenda. She was still holding her phone up, recording. You blocked a fire hydrant during an active structure fire, I said quietly. My son almost died because of you. You had no right to destroy my car. I'm a taxpayer. I own property in this neighborhood. You can't just— My son was unconscious from smoke inhalation. The paramedics had to resuscitate him. Do you understand what I'm saying? My 8-year-old son almost died. That's not my fault. You should have planned better. You should have had other water sources. I stared at her. Other water sources. Yes, that's what we pay taxes for. Proper planning, not destroying private property. Mrs. Morrison, you parked illegally in front of a fire hydrant. I've asked you to move at least 5 times over the past 6 months. You refused every time. It's a public street. It's illegal to park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant in California. Vehicle Code Section 22,514. Violation carries a fine, and the vehicle can be towed. And in an emergency, we're authorized to do whatever is necessary to access that hydrant, including breaking your windows. I'll sue you. Go ahead. And I'll file charges against you for obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, and about 6 other violations I can think of off the top of my head. Her face went red. You're just mad because I've been enforcing HOA rules. You've had it out for me ever since I became president. This has nothing to do with the HOA. You've been harassing me for months, making complaints about my parking. This is retaliation. Officer Park stepped in. Ma'am, Chief Webb is correct. You were parked illegally. In an emergency situation, fire department personnel are authorized to take necessary action to access hydrants. That includes breaking vehicle windows, but you'll need to contact your insurance, and you may receive a citation for blocking the hydrant. A citation? Are you kidding me? Look at my car. I looked. The Escalade sat there with both front windows smashed out, 2 fire hoses running through the interior, and water pooled on the leather seats. It was probably totaled. You're lucky that's all that happened, I said. You're lucky my son is alive, because if he'd died because we couldn't access that hydrant fast enough, you'd be facing a lot more than a citation. Brenda's eyes widened. For the first time, I think reality started to sink in. I didn't think. No, you didn't. You never do. You just do whatever you want and assume there won't be consequences. I turned to Officer Park. I want her cited for blocking a fire hydrant, and I want a formal investigation into whether her actions rise to criminal obstruction. Chief, I understand you're upset, but do it. That's not a request. I walked away, went back to my crew. We finished operations, made sure the fire was completely out, checked for hotspots, secured the scene. Sarah came over to me. Chief, you should go to the hospital. Be with your family. We've got this. I need to. We've got this, she repeated firmly. Your son needs you. Go. She was right. I got in my vehicle, drove to County General Hospital. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Tyler was alive. That's what mattered. He was alive. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because when I got to the hospital and saw my son lying in that hospital bed with oxygen tubes in his nose and an IV in his small arm, I made a decision. Brenda Morrison was going to face every consequence available under the law. Every single one. Tyler spent 2 days in the hospital. Smoke inhalation had damaged his lungs. Not permanently, thank God, but enough that they wanted to keep him under observation. He was scared, confused, kept asking if his toys had burned, if his room was gone, if we could go home. Lisa and I took turns staying with him, sleeping in uncomfortable hospital chairs, trying to keep his spirits up. The fire investigators came by on day 2. Captain Mike Reynolds, head of the county's fire investigation unit. Marcus, I need to ask you some questions about the fire. We went to a private waiting room. Mike had known me for 15 years. Good investigator, thorough. What started it? I asked. Electrical? The wiring in Tyler's room? Looks like it was old, probably original to the house. Finally gave up. Started in the wall behind his bed, spread to the insulation and framing, so it wasn't suspicious. No, just bad luck and old wiring. But Marcus, he paused. I need to ask about the hydrant situation. I explained everything. The blocked hydrant, Brenda's refusal to move, the decision to break the windows. Mike took notes, nodded. You followed protocol. In an emergency, accessing water sources takes priority. You're covered legally. What about Brenda Morrison? Can charges be filed? That's up to the DA officer. Park filed a report. Cited her for blocking the hydrant. That's a $250 fine and a point on her license. But whether it rises to criminal obstruction, he shrugged. That's tougher to prove unless we can show she knowingly and willfully obstructed emergency operations. She refused to move her car during an active fire. How is that not willful obstruction? You'd have to prove she understood the severity and still refused. Her lawyer will argue she was confused, scared, and didn't understand what was happening. She was recording on her phone and threatening to sue me while my son was dying. Mike's face hardened. I'll make sure that's in my report. And Marcus, I've got security footage from a neighbor's camera. Shows the whole thing. Brenda looked out her window, seeing the fire, seeing your crew arrive, then deliberately staying inside when they knocked. 47 seconds between when Sarah first knocked and when Brenda finally opened the door. 47 seconds. 47 seconds she sat there while your house burned. That might help establish willfulness. After Mike left, I sat in that waiting room for a long time, thinking, planning. I called my insurance company. They'd cover the house repairs and our temporary housing. But we'd probably be displaced for 6 months minimum. The damage was extensive. I called the county attorney's office. Asked about criminal charges against Brenda. Chief Webb, I understand your frustration, but criminal obstruction is difficult to prove. We'd need clear evidence that she intentionally prevented emergency operations with knowledge of the consequences. She parked illegally in front of a fire hydrant, refused to move during an active structure fire, and delayed our response by nearly a minute. What more do you need? Let me review the reports. I'll get back to you. I hung up, frustrated. That evening, I went back to what remained of my house. The fire investigators were done. The scene was released. I could go inside. The smell hit me first. That acrid, chemical smell of burned plastic and wood. It gets in everything. Your clothes, your hair, your lungs. I walked through the first floor. Water damage everywhere from the hoses. Soot on the walls. Furniture ruined. I went upstairs. Walked into Tyler's room. It was gone. Everything was gone. The bed he'd slept in since he was 3. His bookshelf. His toy chest. The posters on his wall. The growth chart we'd marked every birthday. All gone. I stood there in the ruins of my son's room and felt something I rarely let myself feel in this job. Pure rage. I pulled out my phone. Made a call to someone I'd never thought I'd have to call. Patricia Chen, attorney, specialist in civil rights litigation and emergency services law. Patricia, it's Marcus Webb. I need your help. Someone's negligence almost killed my son, and I want to make sure they face consequences, civil and criminal. Here's what I need you to do. Patricia Chen agreed to take the case. She was expensive, but she was the best. We met at her office 3 days later. I brought everything. Mike Reynolds' investigation report, Officer Park's citation, the neighbor's security footage, photos of Brenda's Escalade parked in front of the hydrant over the previous 6 months. I'd documented it after the 3rd time I'd asked her to move. Patricia reviewed everything carefully. Marcus, you have a strong civil case. Negligence, reckless endangerment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Maybe even gross negligence, given the pattern of behavior. What about criminal charges? That's up to the DA, but I can put pressure on them. File a formal complaint. Get media involved if necessary. Do it. She did. Patricia filed a comprehensive civil lawsuit against Brenda Morrison, seeking $200,000 in damages. Not because we needed the money. Insurance was covering most of our losses, but because I wanted Brenda to understand that actions have consequences. The complaint was detailed. It outlined every time I'd asked her to move her car, every time she'd refused. The security footage shows her deliberately ignoring emergency responders. Tyler's medical records show the severity of his smoke inhalation, and Patricia sent copies to every local news outlet in the county. The story exploded. Fire chief's son nearly dies, as HOA president blocks fire hydrant, was the headline most places used. The local NBC affiliate did a 5-minute segment, showed the burned house, interviewed neighbors, got a clip of Brenda yelling at police officers about her car while my house burned in the background. The internet went crazy. Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. Everyone had an opinion. Most people were on our side, outraged that someone would block a hydrant, horrified that she'd refused to move during an emergency. But some people, mostly HOA board members and property rights advocates, argued that we'd overstepped, that destroying her car was excessive, that we could have accessed a different hydrant. That last argument made me furious. The nearest hydrant was 3 blocks away. The time it would have taken to run that much additional hose could have cost Tyler his life. The publicity did its job, though. 3 days after the story broke, the county DA's office called. Chief Webb, we've reviewed the case. We're filing criminal charges against Brenda Morrison, misdemeanor obstruction of emergency services, and reckless endangerment. It wasn't the felony I'd hoped for, but it was something. What's the penalty? Up to 1 year in county jail and a $5,000 fine for the obstruction. 6 months and $2,000 for the reckless endangerment. Realistically, she'll probably get probation, community service, and restitution. I want restitution to include our medical bills, temporary housing, and my family's emotional distress. We'll include that in the sentencing recommendation. Brenda's attorney, Patricia, called 2 days later, trying to settle the civil case. My client is willing to pay $25,000 to make this go away. Patricia didn't even consult me. No, we're going to trial, and we're seeking $200,000 plus punitive damages. That's excessive. My client made a mistake, but your client's mistake nearly killed an 8-year-old child. We'll see you in court. Meanwhile, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. I wasn't on the board, but several neighbors were. They called me afterward. Marcus, we voted to remove Brenda as president. She's off the board completely. We're also revising the parking regulations to make it crystal clear that fire hydrants must remain accessible at all times. Good. Some board members wanted to defend her, said you overreacted. But once we saw the security footage, Marcus, she watched your house burn for almost a minute before she even opened her door. That footage became key evidence in both cases. It showed everything. The fire trucks are arriving. Sarah Chen is running to Brenda's door, pounding, waiting. Brenda was visible through the window, looking at her phone. Sarah is knocking again, harder. Brenda is finally getting up, walking slowly to the door, opening it. The conversation. Brenda shook her head, crossing her arms. Sarah is pointing at the hydrant, at my burning house, gesturing urgently. Brenda is saying something dismissive, starting to close the door. Sarah is blocking it with her boot, pleading now. Brenda's smug expression. She shook her head again. Then, they closed the door in Sarah's face. 47 seconds total. 47 seconds of deliberate indifference while my son was dying. The video went viral. Millions of views across social media. Comments ranged from outraged to calls for Brenda to be charged with attempted murder. That was excessive, legally speaking. But I understood the sentiment. The criminal trial was scheduled for July, the civil trial for September. But before either one could happen, something else occurred. Something that made national news and changed fire safety regulations in 3 states. Let me tell you what happened. In June, about 3 months after the fire, I got a call from a representative from the National Fire Protection Association. They wanted to feature our case in a campaign about fire hydrant accessibility. Chief Webb, what happened to your family illustrates a critical public safety issue. Blocked hydrants cost lives. We'd like to use your story with your permission to push for stricter enforcement and harsher penalties. Nationwide, I agreed immediately. They created a powerful video campaign, featured Tyler telling his story, showed the burned house, the blocked hydrant, Brenda's Escalade with the smashed windows and hoses running through it. The tagline was simple. 15 feet could mean 15 minutes. Keep hydrants clear. The campaign went viral. Within 2 weeks, it had been viewed over 20 million times. State legislators started paying attention. California passed a law increasing penalties for blocking hydrants from $250 to $1,000 for the first offense, $5,000 for subsequent offenses. Oregon and Washington followed with similar legislation. 3 cities including ours implemented fire lane cameras that automatically ticket vehicles parked illegally near hydrants. Our story became a case study in fire science programs across the country, and in July, Brenda Morrison's criminal trial began. The courtroom was packed. Local news cameras, neighbors, fellow firefighters who'd come to support us. Brenda's attorney argued that she'd been confused and frightened during the emergency, that she hadn't understood the severity, that destroying her car was an overreaction. The prosecutor, a tough woman named Rebecca Torres, systematically destroyed that defense. She played the security footage, all 47 seconds of it, showed Brenda's deliberate indifference. She brought in Sarah Chen to testify. Sarah described begging Brenda to move the car, Brenda's refusal, her threats to sue. She brought in the paramedics who'd resuscitated Tyler, had them describe his condition, how close he'd come to dying. She brought in Fire Marshal Thompson, who testified that the delay in accessing the hydrant had directly impacted our response time, that even 30 seconds can be the difference between life and death in a structure fire. And she brought in Tyler. My 8-year-old son walked to the witness stand in his little suit. The judge had approved him testifying in a closed hearing because of his age, but we'd agreed to let him do it in open court. Tyler wanted to. The prosecutor asked him gentle questions, what he remembered about the fire, how he'd felt, what happened in the hospital. Tyler answered in his small, clear voice. Said he'd been scared, that he couldn't breathe, that he'd thought he was going to die. Did you know your dad is a firefighter? The prosecutor asked. Yes, ma'am. Did you think he would save you? Tyler nodded. I always think that. Dad saves people. That's his job. And he saved you that day, didn't he? Yes, ma'am. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the judge looked affected. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Found Brenda guilty on both counts. The judge sentenced her to 90 days in county jail, suspended pending completion of 200 hours of community service, 1 year of probation, a $5,000 fine, and restitution of $32,000 covering our medical bills and temporary housing costs. But more importantly, she'd have a criminal record, and she'd have to stand in front of the court and acknowledge what she'd done. The judge made her do it, made her face us. Mrs. Morrison, do you understand the harm you caused this family? Brenda stood there, crying. She'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Lost weight, looked haunted. Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand that your actions nearly resulted in the death of a child? Yes, Your Honor. What do you have to say to the Webb family? Brenda turned to us. Lisa and I sat in the front row with Tyler between us. I'm sorry, Brenda said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was selfish and stupid and wrong. I nearly killed your son because I was too proud to admit I was parked illegally. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. She was sobbing now. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tyler looked up at me. I nodded. It's okay, Tyler said quietly. I forgive you. And just like that, the anger I'd been carrying for 3 months lifted slightly. Not completely, but enough. The civil trial never happened. Brenda's insurance company settled for $175,000. We put most of it in a trust for Tyler's college education. Our house was fully repaired by October. We moved back in November. It felt strange at first. Everything was new and different, but it was home. Tyler recovered completely. No permanent lung damage. No psychological trauma beyond some initial nightmares. Kids are resilient. He's 9 now. Still loves firefighters. Wants to be one when he grows up, just like his dad. I tell him I'm proud of him, no matter what he becomes. Brenda Morrison moved out of the neighborhood, divorced, started over somewhere else. I heard she volunteers now at a fire safety education program, teaching people about hydrant accessibility. Maybe she learned something. Maybe she didn't. Either way, she'll carry that criminal record for the rest of her life. The HOA is completely different now. New board, reasonable people who understand that rules exist to help the community, not control it. They installed additional hydrants throughout the neighborhood, stricter enforcement of parking regulations, regular fire safety inspections. Our neighborhood is safer because of what happened. That's something, at least. I still serve as fire chief, 34 years in the service now. I've responded to hundreds of fires since that day, but I'll never forget standing on my front lawn, watching my house burn, knowing my son was inside, unable to access the water we needed because one person decided rules didn't apply to her. I'll never forget those 47 seconds. I'll never forget carrying Tyler's unconscious body out of that burning house. I'll never forget the sound Lisa made when the paramedics started doing chest compressions. And I'll never forget the lesson that selfishness has consequences. That every rule about fire safety exists because someone, somewhere,